YouTube is moving slow. Hey there! You have found the Hawkeye Hotspot podcast here on hawkfanatic.com. It is Wednesday, November the 22nd, a little bit before 9:15 a.m. It's actually 9:13 a.m. will be exact at Central Time. You're not off your rocker or anything like that. We are going a day early because of the holiday tomorrow. And then obviously the game is on Friday. So this was the best time to do it. And I am Rob Howe. That is Scott Doctorman. I am low on sleep because we have a new puppy that kept me up since 4:30 this morning. So try to stumble through this. Scott, wanted to start with I've been having some weird thoughts this week and sharing them on Twitter X. And I just thought, this game this Friday, you want to win, you want to get to 10 wins. Why not just take the shackles off Brian Kirk and just let him call the game the way he wants to call the game and see what happens without Kirk interfering. I've gotten some suggestions for exotic plays. You've watched this team. You're a football savant. You've seen how the playbook has kind of unfolded this year. Give me an exotic that you think would work Friday against Nebraska. I know I gave you no preparation for this, so this is off the top of your head. I've gotten some, just empty the whole game and just, go 4 or 5 wide. I think that one's kind of the one that everybody's been wanting to see. But I think even if Brian was in charge of everything, I don't think we'd see that.
Well, they did go a lot. I mean, last week they went radical. They went 0-1 on a lot of counts, like 5+5, where they went 4 wide receivers, 1 tight end. So they did go. They do go 5 wide more frequently than people give them credit for. A lot of times, though, what I've saw in the past was a lot of times it would be more like 2 tight ends, a running back, and 2 receivers. Now, like last week with Jacob Bostic getting in there, it was 4 wide receivers and a tight end, which I thought, okay, that's evolving. Doesn't mean it's better, but it's evolving.
We're getting there.
Yeah, I would like to see Wildcat myself.
Some other people said the same thing.
Yeah.
You got 3 really good running backs. Go for it.
If you could have, I think the most logical of the handoff backs, let's say, not necessarily even a quarterback, but probably Jazz Patterson. That, if you have him lining up next to one of the other 2 running backs and either fake the dive and then run, I'd like to see that a few times. I think that might work. You can, split out Deacon Hill and he can just kind of get in the way Spencer did a few times. But they have opened things up a little bit.
We saw a few people wanting to throw to Deacon, hand off and have him go out for a pass and catch it and see what he could do in the open field. I'm not so sure that would work.
I would rather see, he could go out for a route, but I'd rather see the ball go to somebody else.
I think he looks like a tight end, but I'm not sure he's as athletic as you would need a tight end.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe if he was AJ Derby, yes. Come on. Addison Ostrenga is a pretty good tight end. Let's give it what it is. I think there's lots of opportunities to do different things. Exotics. Does this team even have the personnel to do an exotic?
It's the 25th anniversary of Hayden's retirement today. I saw the Big Ten Network tweeted that out. So
wow.
His retirement announcement. So it's appropriate to talk about exotics today.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Because that was Hayden. We got some exotics.
Yeah. Were you there for that day?
I actually did not. Pat Hardy went, and I stayed back. I was trying to get a hold of Bob. I was the guy in the office trying to get a hold of candidates. Bob Stoops. I was making. I remember that day. It was wild. I was at the Press Citizen at that time. For folks that don't know where I've been through the years, but yeah. It was a wild day. We were all scrambling and trying to get everything together.
Yeah,
Were you there?
I was there for the Muscatine Journal. And, we were an afternoon paper the next day, and everybody had the same freaking headline, which ruined what I wanted, which is I'll always be a Hawk,
Yeah.
And so,
Everybody used
what?
adios, right?
Well, I think the Gazette used audio, and you guys use adios as well. Yeah. But also that was maybe a lot of times like I think the A1s, but then the sports was always be a Hawk, and I'm like, damn it. So I think I did a legend in his own time. I still have it. I still have it over there, actually.
Yeah, I still have those too in the old storage room. I keep some of those old papers.
Yeah. But okay, so Hayden Exotic, Statue of Liberty. Maybe Hayden or Deacon Hill goes back to pass, and Caleb Brown takes the ball out of his hand from behind, and that was one that he used to run, back in like '81 and stuff. I mean, I don't know how it would work today. Maybe it would, but
maybe you could just stand up the tight ends.
Oh, no.
Oh, I figured that would get you.
No, that's funny that, I mean, he did that, and I understand some of the logic, but he had like no leverage to block, and he wasn't even in a standing position to get in a good route. I mean, he was like, well, now he could see over and see what the coverage is for the linebackers, but every rose has its thorn.
Oh. May he rest in peace. Hayden was one of a kind.
Yeah.
I want that to kind of segue into some of the discussion that's been going on in Iowa football circles this week, Scott. And that is, do you rest your starters on Friday? Do you play to win? How do you get yourself? The West is already won. How do you get yourself ready for this? In my head, I'm thinking, what's the alternative to that? What's the counter argument? And that is, Iowa's got it rolling right now. As we talked about a few minutes ago, the offense is starting to be competent.
Yeah.
If that's a word, need to score more points, but better, evolving, as we've talked about. You go into Lincoln on Friday, you continue to work on those things. You get better playing against an opponent. And I asked that at Nico, and Nico's like, I hadn't thought about it that way, but that makes a lot of sense. It keeps our momentum. That's the counter argument. What say you?
Yeah, I'm not in favor of it, except for the cases of, somebody is dinged up to the point where if the championship was on the line, they'd go out there, but if not, pull them back. Logan Jones comes to mind. He has a high ankle sprain, and he's gone out there last two games and started and then walked away. That's the type of guy. It's like, just shut it down, and if there's and all the guys are banged up, there's no question. But if there's like a defensive lineman that's really huffing and puffing to get to these games and shooting up and everything to try to play, then maybe you cut their snaps way down or something like that. That's really about it. I think otherwise, this team has won 3 straight games. They've got momentum, and you can see that they've got a good vibe about them, that they feel good about themselves. They're winning games. Don't shut that down. And then you've got this numerical part of this stuff, which is 10th win. That's only happened 6 times in Iowa history in the regular season, and 10 times overall. So, you could leave a pretty sizable mark. I mean, we talk about, Hayden's teams only did that twice.
Fewer games though, right?
Well, three times, but twice in the regular season. Yeah, that one fewer game.
Yeah.
So, but then you look at, the 81 team that went to the Rose Bowl that everybody celebrates, they were 8-4, overall, and 8-3 in the regular season. So, this is an opportunity to stamp your mark. And Rob, you were around for this, but like in 2004, that team was rolling at the end of the year. Similar offensive issues. Now, granted, the quarterback was better. No question about that. But the defense was awesome. And they were winning a lot of close games. I mean, they beat a team that wasn't bowl ineligible because it wasn't good enough, 6-4. And so this team is kind of doing some of the same things. Keep it rolling. Plus, look who you're playing. You're playing Nebraska.
And what they did last year.
Yeah. Here. Right. I mean, Iowa's 17-1 in its last 18 November games. The loss was here. It knocked out the quarterback. It knocked out, the best player on the field, and Cooper DeJean. Well, one of the best players on the field.
Jack Campbell would like a word.
Yeah, and Sam Laporta was out. So, yeah, that's why I stopped myself. I'm like, let me catch my words and put them back in my mouth. And Sam Laporta was out. And, they took a trophy from your home. Senior day matters to these teams. Every team matters. We get trapped into that rhetoric, but they want to win their last home game and they didn't get to do that. And so you've got all those factors in, and plus, big picture, I don't think most recruits are shallow enough to say, I'm going to go to Iowa or Nebraska based on the win, but it does change the momentum in recruiting and it changes the discussion. Like, hey, if Nebraska wins and they're going to Alex Mansky, who's already leaning that way, and say, hey, we're right now we're rolling a little bit higher than they are. We've got a chance to really be special, and look at the way we finished. We got to a bowl game. We beat them at the end. We feel like our program is on good footing and it's moving forward. But whereas if Iowa wins again, it's like, same old at Nebraska, man. This was a tough year offensively, but we're going to be all right. We're going to make things a little bit better, and you're going to be a part of that.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for that, Nebraska winning last year in Kinnick, this would have been a three-peat in the West Division. Iowa would have had 3 trips in a row to Indy. So that's got to be. I know what they're saying publicly, but the opportunity to keep Nebraska from going to a bowl game, they won't tell us that publicly, but that's certainly motivation.
Mason Richmond, when I got him one-on-one, he goes, that's something that we'll say when we win. The schadenfreude right now is there, but it'll be coming out if they win, So, yeah, I mean, you've got all those factors. They can go 5-7. It's like, man, they can't get to a bowl game. It's been since 2016, which is just unreal. They're the only Power 5 team to not go to a bowl game over that span. And you can keep them down yet again. But they've got a really good defense, which is something strange to say about Nebraska in recent years. But their offense is similar to Iowa's in its effectiveness and way, way, way worse when it comes to turnover margin. It is gross. I mean, they're
how much is that on Sims? He was bad.
I would say, they're minus 15, and then they've had 28 turnovers. Wow. So that's terrible, but he's not the only one.
No, I know he's the main culprit. I think.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, for sure. So when you've got Chubba Purdy, he's probably going to be their quarterback. He's better, but this is a big start for him. And I'm sure his big brother might have some words with him about playing Iowa.
Yeah, and I'm sure George and Brock are talking about it in the 49ers locker room as well. And we'll get into Nebraska breakdown here in a few minutes. It sucks for Logan Jones, man. He's from Council Bluffs. He grew up with Nebraska fans. I hope he can give it a go, but Scott's right. If he's not ready, don't play him. He'll get a chance at Nebraska again. So what else was I going to say? Iowa has finished, I misworded this in my tweet, but Iowa has finished ahead of Nebraska now, Scott, for 9 seasons in a row in the Big Ten standings. That is, like I said in my tweet, I don't think the Big Ten had that vision when they put this rivalry together on Black Friday.
No, they didn't. And part of it was, they don't have a problem. They love the fact that this series, it's become a rivalry. Let's face it,
because of the fans.
Yeah, the fans, because they're similar. They care about their team, and they will argue to the death over it, and that's why you see it when something.
Do you have any evidence of that?
The death part? Not yet. Hopefully not. Hopefully I'm just being hyperbolic there, but no,
but you know when you throw something out there on social media, if it includes Nebraska, they're coming.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know.
And I experienced that this week, but I knew that going in.
Yeah, I tend to get it, I don't know, all the time.
Yeah, you're like, even if you're not involved, you get included.
Yeah, I'm like catnip or something, It's like, you know, and then you start throwing football, it's like laser pointer and catnip, and then all of a sudden it's just, it's a crazy world for a couple of days. But
yeah. Another thing I wanted to get to in the top, and we'll review the Illinois game a little bit here in a few minutes. CFP rankings, Scott, Iowa drops a spot. Not surprising. I was worried that was going to happen just because there's a benefit to playing in the Big Ten West, and it also hurts sometimes. And it's tough to get quality wins, especially this year. Makes sense. Beating Nebraska is not going to help you a ton. That's not going to give you a bunch of upward mobility. With that in mind, is it the Cap One Bowl? If they don't win the Big Ten championship, is that pretty much locked?
Yeah, I've talked to the Citrus Bowl people, about this. Yeah,
Citrus.
Yeah,
I still call it
Cap One. It's been a while.
2004 season.
Just was 19 years ago, but yeah, I got you.
Teach an old dog new tricks.
Yeah, if Penn State's available, they'll take Penn State. Otherwise, it's Iowa. It's really that cut and dry.
And how would Penn State be available to lose this week?
Well, there are scenarios, like for instance, based on the bowl projections that we did and talked to and everything like that. Let's say Texas gets upset in the Big 12 championship game.
Okay.
Then like Oklahoma State or Kansas State or whatever, then that automatically puts the champion in, which would be Oklahoma State or Kansas State. And then it makes Texas an at-large. And would Texas, trump Penn State? Or likewise, Arizona, which is the team that jumped over Iowa in the standings, they're actually playing really well. That's not that's one that nobody should complain about. I haven't seen anybody complain about because they beat the hell out of Utah the other day, like 42-18 or something like that.
I was wondering what they would do with Oregon State too.
Yeah, right. And Oregon State is ahead of Iowa, but they play Oregon. What if they win? That's where the Penn State factor comes in, because the Ohio State Michigan loser is either going to be A, in the playoff if some things happen, or B, if they don't, they're going to the Orange Bowl, which skips the ReliaQuest Bowl. And then
formerly known as the Outback Bowl.
Out
there that haven't seen the branding change.
Yeah, and that one hurts, man. It's like
that one is that goes against everything we believe in.
I know. I mean, I know that's where Kirk would love to go, but
so can you tell? I know this, but can you explain to people why the ReliaQuest Bowl is even a longer shot because of the tie-in with the Orange Bowl?
Yeah, what it is since if the Big Ten goes to the Orange Bowl, it vacates that spot to the ACC. And it's kind of weird when you think about it, especially in a year like this, because the Orange Bowl's number 2 team will say it's Louisville, or that goes there, which it would probably be anyway. Even if they beat Florida State, it'll probably go there. If they loses to Florida State, it'll probably go there. But then it vacates the ReliaQuest spot, which, would probably go to Notre Dame because they're part of the ACC lineup. But like, let's say Penn State ends up in the Cotton Bowl or the Fiesta Bowl, it remains one of the top, the New Year's Six. Then the Citrus Bowl is all Iowa. But if Penn State falls, Iowa will end up in Vegas. So that'll be the December 23rd against a Pac-12 team. So it's really, unless they win in Indy, which none of us are really planning on, but if they do, if they happen to pull a miracle, which would probably lend itself to books and stuff around here. Otherwise it's either Orlando or Las Vegas.
Yeah, I'm not so sure from feedback I've gotten that people wouldn't prefer Las Vegas, but it is close to the holiday. It's
Yeah.
earlier. It's not as prestigious of a bowl.
No, it's moved up now that
It
it's.
definitely has moved up, but I think the Citrus is still after the New Year's Six.
Oh
Isn't
yeah,
the Citrus still the top dog?
yeah, and that'll be against probably Ole Miss.
Kiffin,
Yeah, Lane
Lane
Kiffin.
Kiffin. That would be
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, they're their number one choice based on the way that because you project the SEC, Alabama and Georgia are in the New Year's Six, and then Missouri probably is too. They're kind of in the Penn State category, but they've got better wins than Penn State does. So no chance at Mizzou. This isn't probably the year you want to play them anyway.
And Tennessee's going in the tank. They
Yeah,
look like they were a possibility for a while.
right. Now, if Ole Miss would happen to say sneak past Penn State, then Ole Miss would probably and go into the New Year's Six. Then it probably would be Tennessee. It wouldn't be LSU. LSU's already had they've been in Orlando 3 of the last 4 years, either for bowl games or for kickoff classics. So they told me that no, that's not an option. So it would, if you're in the Citrus Bowl, it's going to be Ole Miss. I would give it 90%, and then Tennessee probably 10. That's really about cut and dry. If you're out in Vegas, most likely it's Utah, because Utah has a base similar to Iowa, travels a lot, good program. There's a lot of similarities between Iowa and Utah. Kyle Whittingham's been there. I think he's one of the second or third longest tenured coaches in the country.
Yeah.
Physical brand of football, travels well. It's a state without a pro team. That one's pretty much locked in unless they lose to Colorado, which I don't expect. So if it goes to Vegas, it'll be Iowa, Utah.
And then another side note, Iowa's going to play the number one team in the country next week, right?
1 or 2. Yeah.
I got to think whoever wins Michigan or Ohio State jumps Georgia, right? Georgia plays Georgia Tech. I'm thinking at least for that week. And then when Georgia plays Alabama the following week, if Georgia wins, then they hop back over Ohio State or Michigan if they beat Iowa, which is most likely. So I think Iowa might get a chance at number one next week.
Yeah, what a chance it will be, man. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here. We can obviously discuss it next week, but that would rank not only as the best win of the Ferentz era, if you're to do that, but one of the best, if not the biggest wins in Iowa history.
I think it would be it's one of those things. It's not on the level of a mate like the Jets over the Colts or Villanova over Georgetown, because those were for championships,
right?
Like national championships or world championships, but it would rank up there because I've seen some early odds, Scott, in the low 20s for point spreads.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's where you're looking right now. Is you're looking at they're going to be a 23-point underdog or something like that, and I would probably take Iowa in the points just because I think they're going to be very, very motivated to keep it close. And the thing is with this team, Rob, this program, every time you seem to think that they're going to just get rolled in one of these games. The Michigan in 16 game is the one that always pops in for me, because I was at Penn State the week before. They gave up almost 600 yards to Saquon Barkley and Trace McSorley and Chris Godwin. I mean, they had a great offense. I mean, and they had a really good defense too. And it was 41-14. And then they were coming back home to play Michigan, who beat Penn State 49-10 during the season and was number 2 in the country, undefeated, 9-0, had that defense, which was as good as we've seen in a long, long time. And Iowa's lining up with a bunch of mutts up front. It's like Kittle's out, so you got Peter Picard and Nate Wheating at tight end, 2 walk-ons. You've got Boone Myers, and you've got a bunch of guys who are either walk-ons or very low-level recruits. But one thing about Iowa is you will hear from them. They will punch you in the mouth, and they may not be any good, and they may lose, but you're going to feel their impact. And if you're let's say Ohio State, and you get over Michigan Mountain and you feel like, all right, we conquered this, we're ready to go, and you're not ready to compete, then, because, hey, last year we beat them 54-10. That's what's going to happen this year too. Be ready. be ready for a rumble.
BJ Stroud ain't walking through that door anytime soon.
No.
So your offense does not. I mean, you have the best player in college football for my money.
Yeah.
But you don't have the pitcher is not as good as the catcher, so to speak.
Exactly. For sure.
And Scott, who's a better matchup for Iowa? Michigan or Ohio State?
They're both awfully tough. I think Ohio State's defense is better than Michigan's. Not by much, but a little bit. They're both they're both number 1 and number 2 in the country in stop rate. So it's kind of like pick your poison. I would, I guess I would say Ohio State.
It's a hard question, isn't it? People have been throwing this at me, and I'm like, and I think Ohio State's a better matchup just because of J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah. I was probably going to lean more on the offensive line. I think Michigan's offensive line's a little bit better.
Yeah, that's true too.
Cade Stover's a tough matchup at tight end. You wish you would have Cooper DeJean playing, and he could get beat too by Marvin Harrison. He did last year, and Marvin Harrison again
he was the NFL corners right now. So
I was going to say he's a Pro Bowl guy if he's there now. In the NFL, he's a Pro Bowl receiver, so that's going to be a challenge for people. But if Iowa turns it into a fist fight, drags it down to Iowa's level, it's like, hey, it's the Socs versus, we're going to go in the old school here, 40 years ago, the outsiders, Socs versus the Greasers, and it's raining, and you're getting in the mud, and hey, the Socs don't like being in the mud, and then all of a sudden it's like fourth quarter, and it's 13-10. Which team panics? Iowa's been there all year. Ohio State, we didn't expect this. And you can't just turn it on. You can make big plays, but the other team has to make a mistake to give you a big play. And so that's where Iowa has a chance. I'm not predicting it. I'm not going to sit there and go, yeah, this is going to happen. And I mean, I give it like a 5% chance, but I would have loved to have seen if Cade McNamara and Eric All were still playing, and then it was Michigan, then you could have that kind of vibe of, whatever. But
yeah,
I don't know.
That's the bummer of it. I was thinking about that the other day too, that those guys won't get a chance to play against their former team, and we won't have that story angle.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Kind of stinks, but you know what, Scott? This is probably a good time to take a break, and then we can get into some football talk. We'll look back a little bit at last week, and then look at Nebraska and let folks know what we see there. Want to let folks know that support for the podcast comes from Systems Unlimited, celebrating 50 years of providing services to people living with disabilities and mental health needs throughout East Central Iowa. A list of their services and upcoming events can be found at sui.org. Hear from a few more sponsors right now, and Scott and I will be back on the other side. Hang in there. And we're back. For anybody that's watching on YouTube that wonders why I do that, it's when I go to edit the audio, it gives me that little space of emptiness so I know where to put the other ads in. And I'm not very technically savvy, so I need that. Most people that are good at that stuff can fit it in wherever. I can't do that. So that's why we do that. So, Scott, let's look back a little bit at Illinois. We're seeing you were talking earlier about the offense evolving and finding ways to win and making that big play when it needs to make a big play. We saw it at Wrigley with Deacon Hill to Caleb Brown. We saw it the other day when Caleb Johnson, another Caleb, comes in and gets that big play there. It's like Mississippi State in the Outback Bowl. You and I referenced that a lot. The Nick Easley, the Petrus to Ragaini against Penn State a couple years ago. You need a big play. Iowa's finding a way to make those big plays, and then the defense, man. As much respect as I have for Phil Parker and the guys on defense as coaches. I had some worries with what they lost last year from this defense, and the ability for them to be as good as they are this season. To me, is the story of the season. I know everybody focuses on the offense, but the ability to just reload on defense to me is, I don't know, it's amazing.
And they're doing it in different ways. I mean, last year they had 37 sacks. This year they have 20. They don't have the edge rusher like they did with Lucas Van Ness, who, if nothing else, even if he didn't get there, somebody else did because they were lined up one-on-one or they matched up their best blockers on him. And then you throw on a blitzer like Seth Benson and a Jack Campbell and Riley Moss, who was a shutdown corner. You had all these elements and pieces that they had to replace. Kayvon Merriweather, who started on Sunday for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You have these great pieces, and then you got to, oh, by the way, Noah Shannon's can't come back. John Wagner was a really solid piece for a long time. And you've got to replace all of them, and then they've seemingly played better. And that's hard to say. Maybe they did. But, the thing is, like Jay Higgins replacing Jack Campbell. Nobody in a million years would have predicted this. I just said at the beginning, I'm like, you know what? I think he could be like Anthony Hitchens, which is a really good thing, which is a good player, can plug and play, make a lot of tackles, but not be the difference maker that Jack Campbell was. Well, he's pretty close. He's a different caliber player, but I don't know that I've seen many, if any, linebackers pack a punch like him. I mean, my comp for him is probably Abdul Hodge, and I don't know if that's apt or not, but man,
I think that's fair. Abdul Hodge, I think that's a fair comparison.
His short range punch is as hard as any linebacker we've seen, including Josie Jewell, and then his ability to lead and present himself to the team, and it's rare. And Jack was, for all of his gifts, and they were immense, and he was a great leader, but he was also, very internal. He didn't really get out. He was an introvert. He even admits it. I'm an introvert.
He was more lead by example. Not that Jay doesn't do that. Yeah. I just think Jay combines the vocal part of it with that.
Exactly. And then you look up front, the way that they've improved, because again, you take three major pieces off last year's defensive line, and Noah Shannon not being able to play, John Wagner, and Lucas Van Ness, and then you're plugging in guys, and yet they're still very, very effective against the run. They're disruptive in the pass, as we saw against Illinois, 13 pass breakups. That's huge, and they also seem to be very unselfish. And they run games and stuff, but they don't really go do me plays up front. Davion Nixon was great at that. He got his, and they had a great team around him too. But I cannot be more impressed by the performance they've done. And if Phil Parker's deserved the Broyles Award to me for the last 4 or 5 years, but this year is absolutely a year he deserves it the most.
Totally agree, 100%. Segueing into the Nebraska game, Purdy is a guy who does damage with his legs. And we've seen how Iowa, to your point on this defensive line, if you don't have a Lucas Van Ness or an A.J. Epinesa or somebody like that, again, the genius of Phil Parker is keep him in the pocket. We don't necessarily need to get to him. Push the pocket, but make sure you're containing. And that's what they did against what's his name from Rutgers?
Gavin Wimsatt.
I was watching from the field level how they were kind of containing him in there. They did that earlier when they had quarterbacks that could hurt them. And I think that would be a good plan this week. Make Purdy beat you with his arm. Contain, not just sit there. You're still pushing the pocket, but you're containing.
Absolutely. And I think whether it's Purdy or Heinrich Harburg, who's a very good running quarterback too, a little bit bigger, both of them are capable of getting out and running. But Iowa's philosophy, and as to your point, Nebraska's a really good run offense. It's number one in the Big Ten in yards per game that way. But so it's all going to come down to like two-gap responsibility, and also pressuring the pocket, keeping them in the pocket, because I'm sure Iowa's going, hey, if you want to beat us through the air, beat us through the air. You don't have Trey Palmer against a true freshman this year, like last year when Cooper went out. So, you have those types of situations. And I think, and can they beat Iowa down the field consistently like that? Maybe one drive, maybe two at the most. So
it'll either be the first drive of the game or the first drive after halftime.
Yeah, or the last drive before halftime.
Yes.
Yeah. It seems to be that's the pattern right now, that if you can't get Iowa early and you can't get them before halftime, you're going to really struggle to score, or it's going to have to come off turnovers. And so, I could see a couple of quarterbacks playing. I could see Harburg playing as well as Purdy. But that's really going to be the key. Slow down the run, keep the quarterback in the pocket, make him beat you, because then your secondary is elite, and then even if they complete a pass, then you got to deal with, some really heavy hitters like Castro, and Wampa is a huge hitter. I mean, he is a massive hitter, and people don't see it as much, but when he hits people, they stay hit. And of course, Jay Higgins.
He told me yesterday that he can intercept the passes, even with the club on, Xavier.
Okay.
I asked him, I said, if the ball's coming your way, can you pick it off? And he just smiled and said, yeah. Because I think he's going to have it on again this week.
Yeah, I'm sure. So, yeah. And then Quinn Schulte, Jamari Harris had his best game since maybe the Kentucky game, and probably better than that. Deshaun Lee gets his opportunity again, to start, and he's going to be a guy who's going to be there next year, playing that role. So I think there's a lot to like on Iowa's defense. The question is, can they get run on a little bit? Yeah, but those chunk plays are a 10-yard gash here, a 5-yard gash there, and it's still going to come down to. And then you get in the red zone. Nebraska's terrible there, and Iowa's really good there. So,
yeah, and Tristan Alvano, who visited here a few times, the true freshman kicker from Omaha, has had some struggles as well kicking this year. So Iowa with an advantage there as well. Although Drew has missed a kick in 3 straight games. I think 2 were 52 or 53 yards, and another one was high 40s, I think. So he's not missing chippies.
Other than the extra point, which was blocked, which was significant at the time. Yes. I mean, when you go from being up 3-2, that's with a couple minutes left, and it does show what Iowa was able to do defensively against a team that had a lot of success in the last minutes of games in Illinois. I mean, they had comebacks against Indiana, against Minnesota, and Maryland, and scored, and so. But that didn't enter their mind. They were fine with it. They're comfortable in these games, and so I think Iowa will be pretty well averse to slowing down Nebraska. Through the air, of course, but even on the ground.
I haven't watched a lot of Nebraska this year, Scott, but obviously they've become more defensive oriented and not the opposite of Scott Frost, so to speak. What are they doing defensively that's been working for them?
They're a lot like Iowa State. I would say that's probably the best comp. They're a 3-3-5, but then they can get into a 4 down. They can make adjustments based on the personnel that they're facing. So I would expect them to be largely a 4 down team this week because of Iowa's propensity to run Addison Ostrenga. They have some really good tackles. I think Luke Hutmacher. Nash Hutmacher. I'm going to screw that name up. Is a really good lineman for them. He's one of the better ones in the country. And then the linebacker, and I think we've all heard this name before, Luke Reimer, is one of the best players in the Big Ten at that position. I think he's an all Big Ten guy, probably right there with Jay Higgins. And he blitzes. They're very aggressive up front. They get after people. They're not really a heavy intercepting team, but they create problems, and they create problems for a team mentally as much as physically. So this is, But where can Iowa attack them and be successful, do you think? I think they might have a better opportunity to run counter because they're going to be kind of in flux defensively as long as they hit their aiming points. I think inside zone will that's been one of the more effective plays for Iowa, is either inside zone or just straight up dive play, for lack of a better term. Those are the plays where Iowa is going to have some success running right at them. I don't know that side to side is going to be very effective. Maybe once, maybe twice if they can get a reverse or something like that. And I don't know that outside zone will be effective because they have a lot of talent and they have a lot of skill to pursue the ball carrier. And Iowa's outside zone hasn't been real effective against them for a little while. So I think that's probably the best bet, is you're going to see a lot of man blocking, gap, counter, and it's going to be physical at the point of attack. And yes, I think they can do that. And if they can, then it's play action passing, which I think Iowa has become much better at. And, I was looking it up, Rob, and during our little break there. And I mean, last week they ran 7 plays when they had, 4 receivers and 1 tight end on the field. I don't know that they'll do that again because this is just such a different team, but I expect them to play a lot of, I think Addison Ostrenga is going to have a big game.
It almost seemed like Iowa was trying to stay away from Johnny Newton and Keith Randolph last week. Let's run our plays away from those two.
Yeah, especially Newton. He was like a boundary side 3 tech, and it was like just, whether it's go up the middle and kind of wall them off. Now I'll say this on that touchdown run, which was awesome. The blocking was awesome on that play. They were able to keep him in the wash, which they just had so many guys there that he just couldn't break through. So it was like the Battle of the Bastards in Game of Thrones, just stuck in the middle. And that's kind of what happened there. But the way they blocked it was just phenomenal. And they were able to get a crease. Addison Ostrenga got really vertical on a edge defender, blew him up. Mason Richmond blocked down and did a nice job there. They had kick out blocks by Stylianos and DeYoung. Just really masterful the way that they're doing that. And I know I've been critical. Everybody's been critical here of offensive line play. It's gotten a lot better, no question. And I think Tyler Ellsbury is playing really well. And so, we'll see this week if he can continue that. But if he can, you got to find a home for him at least next year for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. I wanted to get your thoughts on this, and then maybe we'll do some hoops and then our picks and stuff like that. But it's just kind of, I don't want to say maybe uncomfortable, awkward with the Brian Ferentz situation now, because Iowa continues to win, and we saw the emotion on the sideline after last week, and Brian's not wearing Iowa stuff, on his, and people keep asking me about that. I'm like, I don't know, man. He just doesn't want to wear Iowa stuff. I don't know. It just seems like it's kind of awkward, I think is the right word, because you got an athletic director that fired the head coach's son, and now it almost seems like the team is rallying around that.
Sure. And if you can kind of do that, then more power to you, last week was, I think it was the best possible way for Brian Ferentz to go out. He went out with a win. It was a feel-good moment. Most fans have lessened their anger or angst or whatever towards the offense. So because they know that change is coming, and I think most fans now have kind of, accepted it, maybe even bought into this. Hey, who cares if we're the ugliest kid in the dance? We're still dancing, type of thing. And offensively, they're doing all these good things. And but the emotion, you got Mason Richmond dumping him with a Powerade jug, and then Rusty Feth just picks it up. Rusty just launched that thing like 15 yards down the field. And
Rusty Jr.
Yeah, Rusty Jr. I love your picture of him. But I think it had the best possible ending, because Rob, if this wouldn't have happened, and if Barbara Wilson didn't order the hit, and Beth Getz didn't have to execute it. How would fans react right now? They won, but they also scored only 15 points, 13 by the offense. The week before, 22-0. I mean, it was their best offensive output with 400 yards, but still 22-0. And then the week before, 10-7. It's like the angst would still be there. Fans would be like, well, this doesn't matter. We're still going to go to the Big Ten championship.
Well, they'd still be keeping track of the drive for 325 if the firing didn't happen. And we'd still see that not only locally, but nationally.
Yeah. Right. And it's like, at this point, that doesn't matter. He's gone at the end of this year. And for him, he's got feel-good moments because, you covered him when he was a prep at City High, let alone as a player at Iowa, team captain at Iowa. He's been an assistant since 12, OC since 17. So we've seen the guy. I remember him at Kirk's press conference and talking to him there. He was like 15 years old or something, and just kind of a big kid at that point. And so to see him now, finishing out, and he almost lost his leg to this program. So I think overall you've got to be happy for him personally. And he is a really good offensive line coach. And I don't think that should ever be lost in this debate or discussion.
I'm wondering if there was some strategy to this, and you may know more than I do on this, that the decision was made when it was because of something like this potentially happening. When you look at the schedule and Iowa's ability to win these games, it would be a lot harder, I think, to make this move after the season than when they did.
Yeah, you're right. Because how can you fire? And what if they go and they beat Nebraska and they're 10-2, and maybe they have a close loss in Indianapolis? How can you fire the offensive coordinator? I mean, yeah, they didn't score a lot of points, but this is what they're supposed to do. They're built all the injuries, all that stuff. And that's where, in some ways, winning becomes the enemy of progress, because then you're just relying upon that. And then, well, next year you're going to lose another crop of defensive players. And what if the next group isn't quite as good? Maybe they're good, but they're, they give up a few more points, and then 10-2 comes 7-5 awfully quick.
Corey Taylor's gone too, by the way.
Yeah, right. That's an extra first down for the defense every single possession. So even when you look at Nebraska versus Iowa, Iowa's number 1 in the Big Ten in punting at 48 yards. They're 11th at 40.7. So you're talking about, if you're even just trading punts, field position is really going to matter.
Yep, no doubt. So that's the nature of college football. We'll see what Iowa does in the transfer portal when that opens up on December 4th and where they look to build. A lot's going to depend on who stays and who goes. There's still a lot of these guys still have decisions to make, and we'll follow all that moving forward. Scott, let's talk some hoops. You went to the women's game against Kansas State, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Give me some feedback on that. I watched it on TV. That looked like that looked like the blueprint on how to beat this team. Play physical, and if the refs let you play physical, that's your best chance to slow down this high-scoring team, because we saw them come back the next game against Drake and put up whatever it was, 113 or something like that, after scoring in the 50s against Kansas State a few days earlier. Right. So if you try to run with this team, you're not going to win.
Yeah, nobody's going to beat this team if you just decide, let's play transition basketball. And more power to Drake. I think Drake's a really good team. I think Drake's an NCAA tournament team that's got the potential to maybe win a game, maybe even two, there depending on the matchup. But, it was physicality ruled the day. I mean, early on, Aoka Lee was able to she got hurt. I mean, she got 2 fouls really quick, in the first quarter. And that kind of changed the direction for them. But then this is where Iowa has some issues. The other key role players like Gabby Marshall and Kate Martin were not hitting shots. Then they decided, well, I'm not hitting shots, so I'm not going to take them. And then they weren't feeding the post. Like after halftime, Hannah Stolke took 1 shot. You're still in flux at 5 when Sharon Goodman or Addie O'Grady's in there. And then it became well, let's just let Caitlin do her thing. And then she had an off night. And then she got visibly frustrated. And so, she was what, 2 of 16, and there were 2 of 21 from 3. Yeah, that's a recipe to get your ass beat. And that's what happened. And they didn't play very well. I don't think Kansas State was really played that well either. But overall, and you can tell that in some ways it may not be the worst thing in the world for this team. Yeah. Because teams like this, you ride the emotion and you think like the Virginia Tech game. It's just, Caitlin's going to do her thing. We're all going to come together and blah, blah, blah. Well, it lit a fuse. They played a really good Drake team. And, Kate Martin had 25 points. I think what it serves to me, Rob, is that the role players have to be aggressive too. They can't just defer to Caitlin all the time. And you're going to have to figure out a way to get the ball inside more often. Monica Zanano's not there anymore. McKenna Warnock's not there anymore. And those are 2 huge losses. But you've got to figure out a way to make sure that you get the ball inside. And I think that's probably the key now. They've got in this 3-game set that they're playing, the first 2 games they should win decisively. 3rd game, they could play Kansas State again, which I'm sure they want to. And if they figure out a way to, hit a couple of shots and match up physicality or get more fouls called, then I think they win probably by 10 or something.
Yeah, probably North Carolina or Kansas State on the other side of the bracket down in Florida. They took off. The team took off yesterday for that. That is on Friday. The Iowa men play tomorrow. Yeah, you make good points on this, Scott. I just, not only do you lose the productivity of Warnock and Zanano, but just the leadership. And you really need that from Kate Martin and Gabby Marshall. Even if they're not playing well, they have to be leaders on this team and rally some of the younger players. I mean, Hannah Stuelke's still really young. I mean, she played last year, but now her role has increased. So how does she handle that? And there's just not a Robin to Caitlin's Batman right now. There's no second scorer. So I don't know if that's committee-wise you do that, depending on matchups, which other player has the best matchup and go that way, or if you establish somebody like Hannah as that number 2 scorer, Kate Martin or somebody like that.
Yeah, I don't know that they have one other than Stuelke. I think Stuelke is the one that you've got to say, let's push forward with this. I think we saw that a little bit. Because now I'm going back, 7-8 years ago, but saw that a little bit back with men's basketball when they had like Gazelle and Clemens and Peter Jock, and they were kind of trying to figure out how are you going to do this. And eventually Fran said Jock's going to start. And I think, Clemens was coming off the bench at that point. He didn't really like it, but that was the best thing for that team because they just needed that difference maker. And I think with Iowa women, it's Stuelke's got to be our number 2. She's a difference maker in the post. Now, she's not a big post player necessarily, and she can run the floor better than most, if not somebody of her size or ability. But the others also have to contribute if they're not scoring, and they have to get the ball with post feeds and not just completely shut down. And, and they are a very guard heavy offense, because Molly Davis has started and she's played really well in her roles. I think Kylie Feuerbach has played really well coming off the bench. She's ignited the team with some good shots and some big defensive plays. And, you're just, Sid Alfelder has been really good, scrappy, tough kid in the post at times, but they don't really have a lot of big post players, and they're just going to have to make sure they get the ball down there. And at times, Caitlin's going to have to be checked, and I know there's a reluctance to do that when you've got Michael Jordan, but sometimes, and I'm not saying publicly call anybody out, but you the body language has to be knock it off, and just, whether that's Kate Martin, that's probably the one that I would expect to be able to handle that, or the coaching staff, and I think, her body language, they feed off of that. And when she's frustrated and angry and then throwing up her hands like I got hit, then, that gets a bad vibe. My expectation is this is going to happen probably 5 or 6 more times this year. They'll probably lose a shootout and they'll lose 4 or 5 times when they're not shooting well, and the other team's got a really good post, like in Indiana or something like that. So, but they're still really good.
Yeah,
I don't want to take away, but what we're doing, Rob, is we're treating them like a men's team. We're breaking them down. We're not just saying, well, they'll be fine. They'll do. No, a team with this expectation and this ability, you've got to make sure to give them a robust critique.
No doubt. We saw Caitlin show up on the Manning Cast Monday. She's got her State Farm commercials debuting this Saturday. So she's out there, and I'm with you. She's wired the way we see her react. That's the way she's wired. She was like that in high school. I remember seeing her at City High play for Dowling, and that's the way she's wired. She needs to consciously think, can I best lead this team?
Yeah.
How can I get without Monica and McKenna, who were really, especially McKenna. I think that was an aspect of her game that I think went maybe under the radar a little bit, just her leadership skills. But all of those guys, they've got enough experience. They need to have those leaders, because the target's on your back, right? Everybody's coming for you. There's going to be the what we saw against Kansas State, like Scott said, probably another maybe half dozen times this year. Big Ten's good. There are good teams. Ohio State, Indiana, as Scott mentioned, Maryland. There are good teams in this league. What are you going to do in those spots where it's a close game? How do you react? How are you going to pull some of these younger kids through? Molly Davis as well. She's had plenty of experience. There's enough experience on this team. And like you said, hopefully what happened against Kansas State last week was they take the lessons out of that and use it moving forward.
Yeah, that's the real key. I mean, it's basketball, not football. It's not the end of the world. Football is. You lose a game, that's the worst thing in the world. But basketball, it's still November. We've
seen UConn lose, LSU's lost. They've got their own issues going on down there with those people.
Yeah,
that we don't even need to get into.
Yeah. Well, Rob, what is kind of strange though is and Kim Mulkey is not well liked. If there's 2 things that I found that are unifying among the Iowa and Iowa State fan bases. One is their disdain for Kim Mulkey, and then the other was for that trophy, from the Farm Family trophy. But to say things like you're not entitled to know and all that stuff, that's quite the double standard. Because can you imagine if let's say Caleb Williams wasn't playing for USC at quarterback, and everybody's asking what's going on with him? Well, you're not entitled to know. Do you think that would go over very well? Or a men's basketball player? I think as women's basketball players enter the spotlight in an era that we've never, in a way that we've never seen before, that, if Caitlin Clark didn't show up, and we asked, hey, what's up with Caitlin? Oh, you're not entitled to know? Give me a break. She's the most popular player on the planet. Angel Reese, one of the most popular players on the planet. Most recognizable, an NIL evaluation of 1.7 million. You gotta be accountable a little bit here. Now you can be coy and you can say things like, I'm not going to talk about it, but then it's like, well, what about, is it health related? Is it disciplinary? Because players get disciplined all the time and suspended indefinitely based on this. But for her to go off and in a conceited way like that, to me is, you're doing a disservice to the sport.
He's not very likable. I'm not breaking any news there.
No.
Cruella DeVille.
Yeah. There's a lot of that. Yeah.
We'll hit a little men's hoops here. They are also on the road this weekend in California, opposite way. They're going to San Diego this week, and they are, I think, if we're talking about the men's team, the awards that were given out by the Big Ten this week kind of are what the talk is right now. Ben Krickey's emergence and his ability to step in there and produce right away. And then Owen Freeman, because we came into this season going, how do they replace Philip Rebracha? What are they going to look like inside? And so far, so good, Scott.
Yeah, I think that's that answer is already taken place. I was curious as to how would Ben Krikke be able to manage kind of what Philip Rebracha was able to do, and it's seamless. I mean, Rebracha was a good player. Krikke maybe even a little bit better, more skilled offensively, I think. So that's really a godsend for Iowa. And then I really like these freshmen. I think they fit in well. I think they're going to be very good players, and not only in the short term, but in the big picture. And Owen Freeman has certainly been that guy. I think he's going to be a really healthy guy. I think Brock Harding is going to continue to ascend and challenge for more minutes. Dembele, is it Ladji Dembele? Am I pronouncing it right?
Okay. I go and I listen to the pronunciation on HawkeyeSports.com, and then as soon as I'm done listening to it, I forget again.
Yeah, that's what I liked. I really appreciated about Gabe Olasane, because it was like at least I didn't have to pronounce Abudurin. So he's like, just Gabe. But no, I think they've got a lot of work to do to be a good team, but I like what I've seen thus far. And I think that they're going to have to find, and it's going to have to be organic. You can't force it, but they're going to have to find the go-to scorer. Krikke's kind of that guy now, but they're going to need somebody from the perimeter to kind of fill that role too. And you can't force it. Is it going to be Peyton Sanford? Probably at this point, but you want to see it. And is Patrick McCaffrey going to be a role player, or is he going to be a lead dog? And those things will come with time. And I think this weekend will tell us a lot. Are they capable of? They're playing Oklahoma tomorrow, and then they're playing either Seton Hall or USC on Friday. I think that's going to tell us a lot about this team.
Yeah, tomorrow, just so you guys know, for your Thanksgiving plans, Iowa tips off at 2 p.m. against Oklahoma in San Diego, and that is on FS1. And like Scott mentioned, the following day, depending on the results on Thursday, tomorrow, it'll be either Seton Hall or USC. So some good competition out there for Iowa. Good chance to test themselves. I thought they accounted well for themselves when they went out to Omaha and played Creighton. This is another step for them to figure out, where they are and evolve as a team. But early signs, Desante Bowen looks like he's kind of stepped forward a little bit from last year. They needed that. If they can get good point guard play from him and as Scott mentioned, Brock Harding, if you can get those two guys to handle that position and not have to play Tony there or Josh Dix, because I think those guys are better off the ball than on the ball. So I still working it out, and France still working out his rotation, but I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged early, Scott.
Yeah, and I think in some ways, along with women's basketball, is you look at it in the men's perspective as what how much growth can you make? Because, if they split this weekend, that's okay. As long as you see things that, okay, they can improve here, and then they know how to do that, or they know how to fix it. It's not unfixable. They have two incredible back-to-back games in a week and a half. They go to Purdue and then Iowa State against two teams that are better than they are
on the road.
On the road. Purdue obviously is probably going to be number one, especially if they win that Unreal tournament out in Maui. They're playing Marquette.
Marquette beat Kansas by like 12 or 13 last year.
I mean, 4 beats 1. Now they're playing 2. It's just unreal. And you got to go to Mackey. That's never easy for Iowa. I mean, it doesn't matter if they have a good team going there. It's tough. And then going to Ames, it's the same deal. They've got a really good team. So again, you could be disappointed when they lose, but don't, kick the TV and go on Twitter and go on some rants. I mean, because it's a learning experience, and it's about how do they get better. So when they play in the Big Ten, are they improving? And it's just a different attitude you've got to have with basketball versus football.
Yep.
Football, the sky is falling after one loss, but basketball, take it as a learning experience in November. January, kick the dog, but don't do it now. and as long as they're not a golden dougal, it's golden.
Touch on wrestling real quick here, Scott. Again, we'll talk about all this basketball, the winter sports more when we get into the winter. But nice victory against Oregon State in the opener Sunday. Number 3 ranked Iowa, Gabe Arnold, City High grad, wrestler of the week in the Big Ten. Big one this Sunday, though, Scott. Nationally televised at Ames. Should be good. Good for the sport. Good for the state.
Yeah, it is. It's good. I'm happy that ESPN and some of the other major networks are seeing the value to straying outside of their comfort zone when it comes to sports. You know, when we grew up in the olden days and it was ABC's Wide World of Sports, you would see some of the most obscure sports and people would watch because it was the only thing on TV. Then it kind of went to, well, we'll just do football, or on a Sunday afternoon, if it's not football or a basketball game, then we'll just go to shooting pool, billiards, just because it's like a punt. But now
we need to bring back Battle of the Network Stars.
Oh God, yes, that was the best, wasn't it? I love that stuff.
Big Gabe Kaplan fan right here.
Yeah,
I was always rooting for Gabe Kaplan and Joyce DeWitt.
Joyce DeWitt, yeah, you bet. The girl next door, not Suzanne Summers, but I guess Alan Alda was always a good one for me.
Yep.
Mike Farrell especially.
Google that on you, or search that on YouTube, kids. For people that aren't as old as us dudes, go check out some Battle of the Network stars. You won't regret it.
The tug of war, that was always my favorite.
Yep, the obstacle course.
Yes, you love those. Oh, those are great.
But your point is well stated. Wrestling, volleyball, we're seeing, the top sports networks start to put this stuff out there.
And it helps them in the big picture. Like the Minnesota-Wisconsin volleyball. 1.66 million viewers. That's huge. Wrestling is it's a niche sport, a niche audience, but it's a massive audience within that. And we see it and ESPN needs to learn and will learn that it takes more investment than just, we're going to throw on the quarterfinals and semifinals and finals in the middle of March. That there's people willing to watch it, and maybe there would be more people watching a Iowa State duel than watching a random basketball game. And you only know it if you try. Now they don't have the opportunity to do that anymore with Big Ten. But they can do that with, but Iowa, of course, going to Iowa State, they have the opportunity to do it. So I'm glad. I hope it goes well. I don't know that I'll watch it because we might have press conferences at that time for the championship game. And plus, I have a tough time if it's going against NFL. NFL is still, king to me.
Yes. Tough. But again, like you said, niche sport. The people that want to watch that, and then others that have the curiosity or kind of fringe fans.
Yeah.
Then your Iowa State fans obviously tune in. But that is number 4 Iowa against number 8 Iowa State, 2 p.m. Central Time. And like Scott said, that is on the worldwide leader, ESPN, the big one. So tune in if you can, flip around, picture-in-picture, quad screen, whatever you want to do. But that is this Sunday. All right, Scott, let's get into the picks.
All right. You had a fantastic week, man. You beat me.
It was a long time coming.
It was 4-3 versus 3-4. Let's get to the ugly one. I picked Purdue. You picked Northwestern. That was the difference. We both lost Iowa, which was -3.5. And they won by 2.
I know.
We both lost Nebraska, which lost in overtime. And that was 4.5. So if they would have went first and not scored, or even if they would have scored first and Wisconsin would have scored a touchdown, we would have won.
I know.
It's the unluck of the flip of the coin on that. And then finally, talk about bad luck. Rutgers and Penn State. It was -20.5. They won by 21, 27-6. And then for a while, it was like, I don't know if they're going to win, it's going to be by 1 score. So, such is the life. This is why you should abstain from such things.
A lot of those games were goofy. Michigan built that big lead last week, and then Maryland came back. Just very, very strange. You talked about the overtime up in Wisconsin. It's kind of a lesson on if you're going to get why they call it gambling.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, think about this. If Nebraska would have won the toss and they would have decided, you know what, let's kick the field goal. And then Wisconsin scores a touchdown and wins by 3. We win that game. You know,
what if Drew Stevens makes the field goal an extra point?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and if he just makes the extra point, then we're all going, ah, you know, the hook got us. But, you know, anyway, these games are pretty interesting because there's only one that's got a real sizable point spread, and I'll start with that on Black Friday, at the night game on Black Friday. Penn State versus Michigan State in Detroit. Penn State is a 21.5-point favorite. This is one of those games where, you know, you worry about the backdoor cover probably more than anything.
Yep.
But I'm going to go with Penn State. It's inside. I'm going to throw the 21.5. I don't like doing that. It's inside. It's in Detroit. They still have a lot to play for because of this college football playoff, because it could come down to how they perform in a national audience as to how they stay up. It could be one spot, and that one spot could be the difference between going to the Cotton Bowl and playing Alabama or going to the Citrus Bowl and playing Ole Miss. And there's a big difference financially. There's a big difference in prestige when you do that. So I'm gonna take Penn State minus the 21.5.
Yeah, rivalry game. This is Michigan State. This is probably, they know this is it for the current coaching staff. Lot to rally around. I'm just on a hunch. I'm gonna go with Sparty here to cover. Okay. That hook is I could see Penn State win by 3 touchdowns and Michigan State getting the back door. So I'm gonna take it.
Yeah, they'll score, like, it'll be 35-7 with 6 seconds left, and Michigan State will score with 2 seconds left, and it's 35-13, and the whole country will be like, go for 2, or oh no, just kick the extra point. Yeah, we'll save another one for a little bit later. But Indiana at Purdue minus 3.5. The over-under is 50.5. Boiler up. Give me the Boilers. They didn't play very well last week, but they tend to play good every few games, which Indiana does not.
So that's a minus 3.5, Scott, for Purdue?
Yeah, Purdue's given minus 3.5.
That's low enough for me. I'll take that. I think they're in Indiana's just dead man walking right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that was they had a chance there with if they would have beaten Illinois in that shootout, and then they could have possibly beaten Michigan State, and then this could have been for a bowl game, yada yada yada. Purdue's played hard even without having really bowl opportunities. Speaking of bowl opportunities, and this is not the one that we would have expected, say, at the beginning of the year, Northwestern at Illinois minus 5.5. Illinois playing for bowl eligibility. No, Northwestern already has it. In fact, Northwestern, by tiebreaker, is the number 2 team in the West, which, beginning of the year, no way in a million years I would have guessed that.
We're going to have the discussion next week. Coach of the year.
Yeah.
Who's going to be – we'll see. It's tough. I think if Northwestern wins this game, I mean, Iowa was picked second in the West. We know the circumstances that they've had to go through to get to this. So I think you and I and the Iowa people probably put more stock into that. But from what Northwestern's done, I mean, it's hard not to give it to him. I give it to both of them.
Yeah, co-coaches of the year would be tremendous. And if Ryan Day wins, he might get it too.
Yeah, I know that one's tough. You can't just discard those guys because they're expected to win.
I can tell you who's not going to get it. And that's even if they win on Saturday. That's Jim Harbaugh.
Yes. I think that is the best prediction you're going to make out of all of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think anybody except maybe himself will vote for himself. But
I'll take the 5.5, by the way.
You're going to take Northwestern?
with the 5.5.
with 5.5. Yeah, I'm going to as well. I think Illinois might win, but I think they might win by a field goal.
Yeah, I think I mean, if this was 3 points, I think I'd have a harder decision here, but I think 5.5 is a nice little cushion.
Yeah. Here's the most important Big Ten protected rivalry: Maryland at Rutgers.
Damn right.
Yeah. Maryland, it's a bus trip. And in these day and age, if you could save yourself $50,000-$60,000, you do it.
I-95 to the Turnpike.
Yeah, you know it better than I do. And I don't really want to know it.
It's not going to be fun traveling this weekend on I-95 and the New Jersey State Turnpike. On holiday weekend. Good luck with that, everybody.
Yeah, there was one time, I think it was Washington was playing the New York Giants, and I want to say the Giants took a chartered train to Washington. I thought, now that's the way to travel. When I was in Japan in the spring on those bullet trains, awesome. I mean, I would totally travel a long distance even that way, because they go like 300 miles an hour. And
if you've ever been on the Beltway in DC, just a nightmare. Yeah. One of the worst traffic. I know it's bad in LA and California. It's really bad. I get that. But that Beltway, man, avoid at all costs.
Yeah, I've heard it's the worst. But Maryland has given up 1.5 at Rutgers. Rutgers has come down to earth quite a bit. Maryland, they've got a really good defense, but I'm going to go with Maryland. It's at Rutgers.
Rutgers, okay.
Yeah. I'm going to go Maryland minus the 1.5.
Yeah, I'm going to go with you. Maryland's a better team, I think, more balanced. They actually have an offense. Rutgers is good defensively, but the offense is not evolved. So I'm going to go with the better team here.
I think this is the type of game that it might end up a shootout. Might be fun to watch. It might be the best way to describe it. Not necessarily caring about the winner or loser. One game that I think people care about, no matter what the records are, and that's Wisconsin at Minnesota, the ancient rivals of Iowa. And Wisconsin's a 1.5 favorite on the road. And you want to talk about, Schadenfreude there. If you're Wisconsin, you can put them out, put you out your biggest rival. And they took your axe last year. And I guess I'm going to go that route. I think Wisconsin's going to win, even though Wisconsin's no good, and I don't think Minnesota is either. But I think it could be close. It's coming down to a field goal, and in that case, give me the Badgers to hurt the Gophers and say, have fun with that pig, but you're not going to a bowl game.
Here's my pick.
You're rowing the boat.
I'm rolling with PJ. The home game. I'm with you. I mean, who knows which of these teams is going to show up? It's just been. I thought, when I saw Minnesota and Iowa, and I thought, okay, decent team. They've looked like doo-doo since then.
They suffered through the Iowa State syndrome from last year, which is how much are you going to give up to win your rivalry trophy? Everything. And Iowa State, well, I mean, it wasn't just because of that, but so I know if Minnesota wins and goes to a bowl game, it might be having fun in Detroit. I think Wisconsin is probably earmarked for the Music City Bowl, one way or the other, because they went to Vegas 2 years ago, and then they skipped last year because it went to the SEC team. And so I think, we had Maryland going out west, if it's not Iowa, of course, but just because, if it's not going to be Wisconsin, then who? We don't know.
So Rutgers pinstripe, you think?
Yeah, Rutgers pinstripe. And then, if Illinois can get out to the desert, if not, now, if Kansas is there, they played Illinois earlier this year, so it wouldn't be that matchup. It'd probably be Northwestern at that point. And then, I don't know, but if Minnesota's available, although they did play in it, it's complicated. That's the whole point about this whole stupid scenario.
And it's about to get a lot more complicated next year.
Yeah. There's a lot of bowls that right now are in flux, and I talked to a little bit of it. I'm going to write about it eventually, but like the Alamo Bowl. That's the number 2 for the Pac-10 or Pac-12. What is it going to do?
I would love to have that back.
Yeah.
Big Ten. That's one of my favorite bowls.
Right. I mean, so does San Antonio go back to the Big Ten fold, or does it go to the SEC? Because it has Oklahoma and Texas.
Mm-hmm.
What about the holiday? What about the Vegas? Vegas may say, you know what, let's just match up SEC and Big Ten, or maybe it's going to be, we'll extend it with the Big 12 because Arizona and BYU and Utah and all those teams are nearby. So again, who knows? It's all in flux at this point. Okay, the game, and it's not the one we're covering. It's the game. Ohio State at Michigan. -3.5 is what I have seen, Rob. I don't know if you've seen a different line that's more updated, but
I haven't. No.
46.5 for the over/under. This is, I struggle a lot of times with this one. Not in this year is probably most of all. I just don't know. I think it could go either way. That said, it's at home. Michigan, I like their offensive line better, like their quarterback better. I'm going to go with Michigan for the three-peat over the Ohio State University, and I'm going to throw 3.5, which I'm not comfortable with, but I'm going to go with something in the neighborhood of like 34-30.
You know how much I bitch and moan about the hook every week, but I'm with you here. If it was in the shoe, I would probably, the number would obviously be different, but I just think Michigan's better up front, as you said. And when teams are closely or close talent wise, which I think these two teams are, I go with that. And then I think Michigan has the better quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we'll know a lot more about Kyle McCord here coming up, but
exactly.
I think, the thing is, against Notre Dame, they was 17-14, I think was the win. And then when it was against, Penn State, it was 20-12. Michigan's even better than both of those teams. Yep. So we'll see what they're able to do. I mean, if they play like that if they win and they play like that against Iowa, then Iowa has a puncher's chance.
Yeah, we'll see. Is Corum going to be able, and Edwards be able? Will they be able to do anything? Yeah. Will Henderson be able to do it? I mean, really good running backs in this game too.
Yeah. We'll see them in the next level and draft them on our fantasy team in a couple of years. The one that we will cover, it's the one that kicks off the weekend, Black Friday in Lincoln, Iowa against the Black Shirts. Nebraska, it's kind of bounced around line wise. Last one I wrote down was 2.5 for the Huskers.
That's what I saw last night. Yeah.
The over/under 26.5. Wow.
We need this. Like I wrote in either my preview or the picks that I do on Hawk Fanatic. We need We need this to close at 26.5 for this season. This season needs a 26.5 over/under to close. Yeah.
And this is the perfect game for it. You've got two of the better defenses in the country. Iowa among the best. Nebraska very close. Two of the weaker offenses in the country.
What are they averaging? Like a combined 30 in conference play, somewhere around there?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you this: that in scoring offense, Iowa averages 18.5, which is 13th in the Big Ten, and Nebraska averages 18.7, which is 12th in the Big Ten.
And it's even lower in conference play.
Yeah, right. I haven't even written down that.
I think I looked it up. I think in conference play they're averaging like a combined 31 points.
Okay.
So take the over.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And then defensively, Nebraska both averages 18.7 offensively and defensively, and then Iowa 12.4. Total.
What does Iowa need to do to get to 325? How many points do they need to score in these last three games? I'm kidding. Don't look that up.
Well,
I was thinking about the other. It's a number that they're not going to. Yeah, it's true.
It's now it's 350 since they're going to Indy unless they forfeit the bowl game. But
good point.
While we're at it, Rob, why don't we take a look here and just for the fun.
What are they at total wise?
That's what I'm looking up. I don't know. I quit looking when because it's over. Scoring 203 points right now.
So they need 147. My remedial math skills.
Yeah. So they need to average close to 50 points a game. To 49 points a game to get.
Hey, it's doable, man.
If they can average 49 points that game against Nebraska's defense, against either one in the Big Ten championship, and then take your pick, whatever bowl they go to, which if they win the Big Ten championship, it's either going to be it's probably going to be the Fiesta or the Peach. And if they could do that, you might want to rehire Brian. But I don't see that happening either way.
I think that is a great spot to end this show and let Scott get on his way.
Yeah.
He's got another podcast coming up at the top of the hour. Check him and Chad Leistico out on that. Chad's a lot better looking than me, so if you're watching on YouTube, you're better off.
He's a lot better looking than me too.
Want to thank all of our sponsors for Thanksgiving. Really want to shout out everybody who sponsors this podcast and lets us bring it to you guys free of charge. No Patreon, any of that stuff. So really appreciate that. Really appreciate everybody who listens to us every week. We enjoy doing it. Hopefully you enjoy listening. Scott, happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. Have a great day and a safe trip over to Nebraska. I'm not making the trip. We're going to put our resources into the Big Ten championship game and wherever Iowa ends up bowling. So you have a safe trip over there.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you who you're going to pick in this game. We haven't picked the game.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm taking Iowa.
I'm going to take Iowa as well.
I am too. Yeah, Iowa's the better team here, and much to, I think, some people's chagrin, they are going to play to win this game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as we talked about earlier, they're not going to go over to Nebraska and say, yeah, why don't we just throw them a bone, let them win. They'll throw their own bones like they always do. And no, this is a rivalry game, and you want to win those games. You want to take that trophy home, that symbol of victory. You want 10 wins, and you want to, especially
home. Yeah. Keep them home. Watch the 70,000 people, well, minus the Iowa fans, which will be a lot. Watch them walk out of Memorial Stadium with knowing that the season's over again. Yeah,
I mean, this is how you want to put them down. I mean, remember when this thing got scheduled and there was a lot of highbrow from that side of the Missouri River, and
2014.
Yeah, we had to evaluate where Iowa was.
You know where they are? Ahead of you in the standings every year since then.
Yeah, exactly. They've lost you once, and it was, and I would say, yay, you won. but yeah, so yes, I've got the Hawkeyes winning. I think it's going to be close, but I think they can pull that out.
Yeah, and plus taking the 2.5 is an even added bonus. Yeah. I think maybe people that are wagering on this game are thinking that Iowa's going to take it lightly because it already has the West wrapped up. But I did not get that sense talking to the guys yesterday over at the practice facility. So I would expect full effort out of the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, most definitely. So.
All right, I'm going to close this again because I did it prematurely before Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there, and thank you guys for listening. And anything you want to say, Scott?
Goodbye, Scott.
What white meat or dark meat? We'll end with that.
I like I'll go with white meat off the first cut, and then but the leftovers I like the dark meat a little bit better. I think it's too dry, the white meat, unless you throw some more gravy on it, and I'm all about that, baby.
I'm right with you. We're right on. We would have. We might have to fight if we were having a turkey because we both want the same thing.
As long as you have extra gravy, we can find a compromise on that one.
And take the cranberry sauce away. I'm anti-cranberry sauce.
It looks nice, and that's it. I won't touch it. Yeah,
it looks good on the table, but I don't want any part of it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, everybody. I'm going to let Scott get out of here. He's got a few more minutes before he has to jump on the next podcast. But again, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And Scott and I will be back next week to preview the Big Ten Championship, talk a little hoops and wrestling as well, do our picks, all that good stuff. So until then, be well. Say goodbye, Scott.